Timer going. Hi, everyone. My name is Theresa. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be sober because of a loving God. Thank you, the team, Fellowship of the Spirit. We rocking and rolling, doing some more service work. Thank you, Chris and Jen. I have to say, I was thinking when I was listening, I remember, this is like a quick little story. I remember I was at a conference and they had me listed as the AA speaker, but I was actually the Al-Anon speaker, and everybody went to the meeting. And so then they announced it at the meeting, and I got up and I was like, I want to see how many AAs are going to walk up out of this room, because we Al-Anons tend to attend all the AA meetings and alcoholics don't go to any. So I'm glad with this combination that we have, so that we finally got some alcoholics that can be still long enough to listen to our Al-Anons, because this is a family disease. So I'm grateful for the format that we have here. So thank you. Oh man, what an awesome job with explaining step one. And my sobriety date, March 29, 1990. Welcome anybody who's new. Interesting. Today I was speaking with someone. It just relates to this. She's fairly new, and her sponsor suggested she call me and that struggling with step 4 and 5. And as I listened, I said, that's not really where the issue is. The issue is with step 1. You got to go back to 1. And Chris and Jen explained that in both aspects of what we suffer from in our disease. And so now that I get to share with you with 2, what is safe for me to assume at this point, I'm in a place that have gotten a grasp of the illness in which I suffer from, that there's absolutely nothing I can do on my own, by my own accord, my own efforts, self-affirmations, muster up, alter my behavior, convince myself, put post-it notes, that's going to change that. Because if I'm not clear about that, there's no reason for me to move to the remaining steps. Like, why would I need to do that? And I think Chris mentioned that. What would be the reason? Interesting, the answer to 1 step I found is in the next step. And what I learned in 1 is, once I put the plug in the jug, I'm left with this obsession of the mind. And now I start getting to the point of the root of the trouble, which is the spiritual malady. And I'm in more trouble than I ever was before. Because in the past, when I was restless, irritable, and discontent, I just turned around and reached for the 1 so I can try to find that ease and comfort. But now I don't have that. And it really starts addressing the unmanageability, as Jen pointed out, of the illness in which I suffer. And that's what I'm going to be doing moving forward. My powerlessness requires that I obtain another power. Where am I to find this power? Well, I was clear that I've had many higher powers, and I gave my life completely to it without question. 1 was alcohol, people, situations, money, relationships, jobs, job titles. I needed another power. And I needed one that was bigger than all those, that was bigger than me. I can't say that I say, if anything, I say I was under the delusion that I was all power. But if I look at the record after all the evidence that I gathered in 1, it began to poke a hole in the falsehood that I had been running my life. And what you introduced me to is, you said the root of my trouble is that lack of power was my dilemma, and selfish and self-centered, driven by 100 forms of fear, was really the issue here. And if I was to live a life of sobriety, I was going to have to be willing to go on a journey to discover another power. And you take me into this step called we agnostics. You already explained the insanity. I think a lot of times in step 2, people are like, I'm not insane. Well, then we need to go back to 1, because I had nothing but evidence to show the insanity of my illness. And I need to be restored. I need, where do I get this sanity again? Talked about peculiar mental twist. I was talking to someone about that the other day. Peculiar mental twist. Look that up. Every time I read that in the book, I get heart palpitations and start getting anxiety. The very mind that gets me in the situation tells me I'm not in the situation, but if I am, it can get me out, and it's going to figure out how to do that. And then I'm doing a good job at it. That is what? That's scary to me. Came to believe. So I have to I came to believe that I can be restored. I'm not restored yet into. I believe that I can be. I heard it from most of you. The hope to the powerlessness and the devastation of the raft of alcoholism says that there is hope here, that that illness can be arrested, it can be treated, but it's a spiritual in nature. And that's an uncomfortable proposition if my alcoholism convinced me that religion was a problem, that priests are a problem, scripture is a problem. Now you're telling me to go to the very thing that I rejected or pushed away and found my refuge in a bottle, which is a spirit, that I have to now turn to that very thing. So this is the proposition when I now introduce this idea of another power called higher power that's going to restore me to sanity, and it appears to be so ambiguous. And the very course of action is that I now have to dismantle my prejudices, because it's an invitation to have an open mind to the possibility that just maybe I might not have all the answers about certain things I believe I'm convinced of. And it also starts pointing out to me that I'm saying I'm not a person of faith. I'm saying I can't believe in something else, but that's not true if I look at the evidence and I look at my life and the choices I've made. I've had a whole lot of faith and a whole lot of trust. It's what I've had faith and trust in that is the dilemma here. And this remains my course. Always said the steps are not exercise or homework. If I have an illness like cancer, diabetes, allergic reaction, the very next thing we need to do is treat it. How is it treated? Well, you tell me deep down inside, every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. So it lies inside of me. I thought it was outside of me. Jen talked about that so brilliantly. I always thought it was outside of me, and so much so that I became it to manage the higher powers I had outside of me. That's so funny. You're telling me it's inside of me, a place that I've never gone. I don't think I ever went there. As a matter of fact, I did everything to get out of me, to disassociate from me, to exclude me from me, or exclude you from me. I've got to go venture into a place I've never really gone. And actually, I don't have the roadmap to get there. I've never been given that treasure map, but you gave it to me. It's in the steps. And the very first course of action is to examine the issues that I have around that. And it reminds me of the innocence of when I looked at the starry night and I asked myself, who did all this? You begin to start asking me questions. Who am I to say that there isn't one? I love chapter to agnostics because I'm always revisiting those questions, because it's like, who am I to say that? Who made all this anyway? Weren't there a lot of people who said that these guys who said that we could fly, that's impossible, it's blasphemous, it's sacrilegious, but now we're flying all over the place? What about electricity? Why do I put all my reliance and dependence on the light switch coming on and turning on objects, or giving me the freedom of choice because I have electricity, but all of a sudden I'm saying I got an issue with something I don't know? I don't know anything about electricity, but I depend on it, I rely on it. So it starts poking holes. It puts Swiss cheese and all of my strong convictions and, my adamant. I was telling someone the other day, one of my sponsees, I said, isn't it amazing that we tend to, especially as agnostics, talk about this idea that science trumps religion and science is not, I'm a scientist. I don't believe in gods and hocus pocus. And I'm like, I find more scientists far more open-minded than the person who's claiming to be agnostic, because when they're in science, they know that they don't have all the answers. They know that there are things that are beyond their comprehension. They're constantly seeking and looking. And even if they take someone else's information, like doing a hypothesis, they basically find out in the end that, yes, it may be different finding, but yet we still leave room for error. So I find science is far more open-minded than a person who claims to be agnostic or atheist. They understand the phenomena of things that we can't necessarily explain, but yet we get an opportunity to keep seeking and learning to have a greater understanding of it. And that's the invitation that you've given me here in step 2. Because sanity is essential for how I move forward in sobriety. Because if I'm living in that state of a peculiar mental twist, I can't differentiate the true from the false, I'm in denial that I'm even suffering from something, there is no solution. And so I began revisiting those ideas. And the answer to 2 is in 3. I can't make a decision if I'm still tripping off of the idea that there isn't one, and it got nothing to do with me. And I don't even know where it is. I grew up always believing in spirit, believing in God. I went to Catholic school. I was drinking and was a spiritualist. I knew that there was a spirit world. I found peace and happiness in that world than I did in the physical world. I didn't like it here. People did mean things here. I needed a drink to be in the physical world. I don't know how to exist in the physical world. It's like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh. And nobody listens. Everybody's a mess. I would get mad at the idea of why God gave man free will. He's a God of mercy. I mean, man does the craziest things, including me. And so I always found peace and comfort in the world of spirit, actually. It's when I had to come back here with you that I was terrified and driven by fear and confused and frustrated and restless, irritable and discontent. And I needed a drink for oxygen just to navigate through this thing you call earth, you call life. And now you help me to revisit that experience that I had in the world of spirit. That's what 2 was for me. I hope if you're new, you listen to similarities rather than differences these few Mondays. I was relieved that I didn't have to figure out my life anymore, that I didn't have to manage my life anymore. I was emancipated at 14. Everyone in my family are alcoholics. I had to be responsible for everything. I was relieved, man. It was like, oh, I can find something greater that can begin addressing life because I don't know how to live in life. I've tried and I'm exhausted. And alcohol ain't working no more. That was my only solution. And now I don't know what to do. So how do you bring these worlds together? How can I take this HP, this higher power idea, and know that it can actually exist in present time, in this dimension, in this world, in the land of the living? That's what it was for me. How do I incorporate that? Well, you tell me I have to go inside of me. I have to go in me. How do I get there? Do the steps. You ain't got to figure it out. I know people say a higher power of your own understanding. Well, the first thing you have to do is misunderstand something. I don't know how to explain it. Like you say the God of your own understanding. Well, I have to not understand something first to get to a new understanding. And I love how the big book, I don't know if it's reverse psychology. They're brilliant. They're vivid in the way they write. I call it a pop-up book. But I think it's awesome that it tells me to find one of my own understanding, but yet you begin to introduce me to certain adjectives and descriptions of a power. And I needed to have an open mind to even consider that as an option, right? One that has all power. I thought I had one of my own understanding. Okay, has all power. I just think that's funny. Later on, you give me words like it's a director, it's an employer. I was like, okay, wait a minute. Am I supposed to understand it that way? What I needed to understand it, there is one and I wasn't it. And now we're going to go on a journey to seek it. And so I revisited in 2, all of the prejudices, the delusions, the illusions, the falsehood, false pride, all this stuff that blocked me. Like my sponsor used to say, getting to my authentic self. Blocks me from this thing that's been in there all along that I couldn't hear, that I couldn't see, I couldn't feel. And so I seeked it outside. And I appreciate that. It gave me a sense of relief, man. You know what? Lay down the armor, wave the white flag. The fight is over. The war is over. Let's try something different. I can always go back to that life. It's available with me at arm's reach, and it will keep coming up every single day. And then I make a decision. I always think about this old timer. She would always say, I remember I went to her once. I said, I think I'm stuck on 3. She was like, you can't be stuck on 3. Step 3 says made a decision. If you ain't made a decision, you still try to come to believe. I still hear, you ain't stuck. You still trying to come to believe. And I believe because I saw many of you shared that you lived life the way I lived. You drank the way I drank. You felt the way I felt, or an Al-Anon, the actions and the choices and the decisions and the controls. Man, many of you shared my story. You mirrored and reflected back to me. You explained to me the illness and what you discovered. And then you told me the solution and why you didn't look like the way you looked anymore, and why you didn't walk the way you walked anymore, and why you didn't act the way you acted anymore was because you found the power. And I'm grateful nobody ever apologized for their relationship with God when I got here. That you made it very clear to me that that was your solution. And I could do whatever I wanted. They didn't know what I was going to do. But if I wanted what you had, I needed to be at least a mustard seed of willingness to just attempt with an open mind the proposition that there is a power in which I can find. And I needed to find it for me, inside of me. And so I make this decision. I make a decision that I'm going to make a commitment to move forward on this journey. That I'm going to have to discover and have a greater understanding. See, even in 3, I don't have a full grasp of my spiritual malady and what I'm suffering from. That's another proposition, another invitation. I am grateful that the steps gracefully, gently, but yet firmly, like a real parent, walks me through this process. There is nothing that the literature has ever said to me that I was a bad person, that I was incompetent, I was an idiot, I was incapable, I was stupid, nothing. For me, it supported and validated some things. Like, it makes sense to me, Theresa, that you would think that way. I understand that you would feel that way. Perhaps you're right. That's why that happened. Why don't we just try something different? That's how I've always seen it. You know, like, why don't we just try to look at it from a different perspective? Why don't you consider this? And it's not so much that what's been happening, that you're a victim to everything or the world or all that's happened. It's not even that that has not happened, is that how have you been going about solving it? And it relates to that unmanageability. That is the invitation. The way you've been trying to solve, it's not working. We need to quit playing God. It don't work. Well, does it not work because you say so? I have evidence. If I take a moment to really go back and reflect, I become like I'm a private investigator. You know what I mean? I'm good with spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, I'm a great private investigator. I become a private investigator. I love CSI channels. I dig that stuff, man, right? Let me become a private investigator and begin to start gathering evidence to support the claim. How does my alcoholism manifest? And what is that about me playing God? I didn't even know that's what I was doing. I find it interesting that it says we're kind, considerate, virtuous, mean, or egotistical. That always fascinated me. And isn't it evident to all the rest of the players, and they try snatching everything out of the show? I'm always like, how do they even know when I'm being kind? I didn't even know. How do you even know? I don't realize that I'm grounded in every decision of selfish and self-centeredness. Honestly, I am not walking around being this psychopath saying I'm going to be a monster to everybody. I really didn't. I had all good intentions. And all it said to me is like, yes, you have had good intentions, but it's not working. Can we just decide that we are going to go on a journey of uncovering, discovering, and as you arrive there, you'll be willing to discard. That's how I've seen 2 and 3. There is a power. Any old ideas that I have of it does not serve a purpose right now at this time, and what I'm seeking to treat an illness that I can do nothing about. And I take the God-given gift called will. The one thing that this power has given me is will and cannot take it away. To me, I received the power of choice in 3, where before I came to you in my alcoholism, I lost the power of choice a long time ago. And step 3, you gave me the power of choice. I need to be able to at least have the power of choice to make a decision. And that was empowering to me. I was impressed with the higher power that you guys found. And I've heard people say stuff tough without my permission. I believe alcoholism did everything to me without my permission. But you guys found a power that needed your permission. And I was impressed with that. That to me, this power must be the omnipotent, the Alpha, the Omega, the great Almighty that will create the heaven and earth and all things and still give room for permission. So I've been under the illusion that I've been playing God. Well, God's not like that, because I ain't never asked for nobody's permission to do anything that I thought needed to get done. So here you threw me, you poked the hole on that one. I was like, well, I guess I've been playing a fake power, because the higher power you guys are talking about doesn't even intervene without your permission. Wow. I want to know that power. I want to discover that power. And through the years, 33 years, my understanding of that power has changed. The decision that I make and the level of depthness and conviction that I've had has changed, because I've changed. My conception and idea has changed because I keep changing. And I think that's why you say a God of our understanding as opposed to our knowing. I'm not sure I will ever really know. But what do I understand it to be today? What am I willing to let go of that's going to block me from a greater understanding? And the answer to 3 will be in 4, because I have not arrived in 3. Because what I need to discover is what's blocking me from that greater understanding that lies inside of me. It's like gush, gush piled up on top. I always tell that story of Kaka. My sponsor used to say this, Kaka in the toilet bowl. And she used to say, if you get a glass of water, and you pour it in the toilet bowl, what do you get with a toilet bowl full of caca? You get more caca, okay? And the caca just seems to keep rising. And so she said that glass of water were my prayers. And all I'm doing is taking these pure, sincere prayers and I'm pouring it into a bowl of caca. So what do we want to do to get a clear toilet bowl? We get a plunger, right? First of all, I got to recognize that it's full of caca, okay? We get a plunger and we got to get everything out. So I have a clear bowl and then I put more clear water in it. And now I have the cleanliness, the purity of what I'm seeking here. And it's interesting that in the big book, and it tells me, I always think that's funny how it says, A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power can relieve me of my alcoholism. Ooh, that was a doozy. And C, that God could and would if he was sought. After you laid out all these steps, right? And then it goes, now you're at step 3. I'm like, wait a minute. Hold on a second. And I take a mustard seed of willingness. And I decide. And the prayer is interesting that it says, relieve me of the bondage of me. I didn't even know I was in bondage. Thank you. I didn't even know I was in bondage. Take away my difficulties. I had difficulties. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like a pop-up book. I had difficulties. All the language around here, even later in the 7th step, it's kind of like, I think I have this list of defects of character. I don't like them. Then I go to the prayer and it says, take all of me, good and bad. Wait a minute, what happened to my list? You know, like, what's going on here? I like using the analogy of electricity with this idea of reliance upon. I learned that I was relying upon the God of reason. And unless someone is having a paranormal activity in their home, what I understand electricity to be is that it's the surge of energy that runs through this home that allows me to have access to multiple appliances and devices and illuminates my space. But I don't recall the energy telling me what I'm going to do in my home. The light does not illuminate at this moment on the computer to say you can now go on Zoom for the next X amount of minutes, and then it'll shut off. You will now cook on the stove. You can now read a book on this corner because I'm going to turn on this light. Before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was walking around in the dark, thinking I knew where I was going. I didn't even know there was a thing called the Department of Water and Power. I thought I had access to all sources of whatever the heck I thought I had going on. I was bumping into people. I was starving. I wasn't eating. I didn't even know I can cook. And I came here and you said, no, there's this thing called Department of Water and Power, Theresa. And if you plug everything in, if you just turn on Department of Water and Power, you're going to see how the world is going to open up to you. And then you know what happens? I plugged it in. I got connected with Department of Water and Power. And I was like, holy Jesus. That's like, look at the mess that I've been in all this time. Jeez, Louise, I didn't even know that was there. And that source of power allowed me to see everything that was cooked in my house and messy in my house. And now it was like, well, we got to clean all this up. We got to clean all this up. That's the first course of action. We got to clean all, we got to see it. Then we got to clean it up. So like poltergeist, this house is clean, right? So that now, now I begin to rely and trust in this source of power that gives me choices that I have access to. And today I believe the only time that power gets unplugged by my higher power is when my disease pulls up with a pair of 65-inch television, 3D glasses, a remote control. I become the avatar and it has a field day with me. And then my higher comes in and unplugs my disease's connection. And after I make a decision, man, strap on and hold on, because I've been on a ride, yo. It's like, wow. And today I welcome it because I want to see anything and everything that blocks me from the sunlight of the spirit, that keeps me to have access to this power, that eventually, I always tell newcomers, keep holding on because your sanity returns in 10. I believe it in 2, but it don't get back. They told me until 10. So that eventually I can have this intuitive thought. I'll have a brain to use. And now I'm living within this power within me. And I'm able to walk a free woman and this thing you call life. And somehow I've learned to bring these worlds together. They're no longer separate. They get to be as one. And now I have purpose and I have meaning. But I need full access every day. Doesn't matter what I did yesterday. Don't matter what I'm going to do tomorrow. Talk about powerlessness. I've watched people die before me. Ain't nothing I could do about that, right? But I've tapped into a source of power that has all power. The drinking problem has been removed. I make a decision and I clean house so I know what to take the next indicated action. I'm grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have no gray area either, Jen. I have no gray area. Either I'm living in the illness and the insanity of my disease that it orchestrates and tells me that I make perfect sense. And I would think that all of you would agree, or I'm in alignment with this power that is looking out for the greater good of all of us and gives me purpose and meaning and changes even my own perspective about life. So I thank each and every one of you. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, all the trusted servants. And I'm excited for our lineup that's coming up for the rest of the month. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Larcine. I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon. I want to thank the committee and all those responsible for asking me to be here. I am always grateful for the opportunity. I want to thank Chris and Jen for their wonderful share on step one. It was wonderful to hear that. And I want to thank Theresa because she's already explained it to you really well. So if you want to go ahead and eat or do whatever, you've gotten step 2 and 3 from her as well as it can be explained. I want to let you know that I am not an expert nor an authority. I'm here just to share my experience, strength, and hope when it comes to this stuff. Whenever I share, my sponsor always tells me that I need to be a good example. And that if I'm not a good example, I need to be a very loud warning. So I'm going to do my best to be a good example and share that experience, strength, and hope with you. In letting you know what's going on with me, I'm not in the best place that I could be. My husband passed away 5 weeks ago. And I'm pretty much, emotionally, physically, spiritually, I'm all over the map. But my feet have been well trained here. And so I'm honoring my commitments and doing those kinds of things. My husband would want me to do that. My higher power wants me to do that. My sponsor wants me to do that. And those are all people and my higher power, things I listen to today. My feet have been well trained. And though I don't know exactly which way to go or what direction to go, I know that their guidance will get me there. So that's kind of why I'm here. So anyway, I have a friend in Al-Anon, Karen Ackerlin, and she says, if you think the steps are hard, try working them when you're perfect. And when you're in Al-Anon, you're pretty perfect. I think that's what makes the steps so difficult. And, when I think about step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. My thing when I got here is, I'm not crazy. I am not the crazy one. They're the crazy people, and again, one more time, when I'm looking at you, I don't have to look at me, and you are so easy to look at. The alcoholic is so easy to look at because they do such absolutely crazy, insane things. And I'm surrounded by it all the time. One of my favorite things with my husband all the time that I thought was absolutely insane is, he was very big at losing vehicles, and how do you lose a truck that weighs thousands of pounds? But he seemed to be able to do that on a regular basis, and whenever he would come to at home and his truck was missing, I would say to him, Butch, where's your truck? And you know what an alcoholic says when you say, where's your truck? He says, what truck? Like there never was a truck to begin with. And thus the insanity and thus the craziness. And then I start to wonder, did he have a truck? Because you're so convincing. It's just the craziness that just starts to happen for me. And I know I one time when I was very curious, crazy, and I looked it up, and its origin is like from the 16th century. And crazy means back then it meant full of cracks. And I can't describe anything that I think is better than because that's, I think, what the family disease of alcoholism does. It piece by piece cracks your family, so everybody becomes crazy. You have no rational thinking going on there. It's just one crazy event to the next crazy event to the next crazy event. And then as the disease progresses, not only in the alcoholic, but I'm here to tell you how it affects, myself as the non-drinker. I think I started cracking way faster than my husband did, because I couldn't understand. My philosophy is all of this. If you love me, you won't do these things to me. And I don't know where I learned that from. I don't know if that's, if there's any truth in that at all, because love is pure. One thing that I've learned in Al-Anon is this is what it's really all about. Pure, unadulterated love. We learn to love people where they are. It's not about changing them. It's not about making them different. And my whole career, my whole life has been about making him be different, trying to fix him. And that's where the insanity, and that's where I started cracking all up and falling apart, because that is not within my power, as was so well described in step 1. And so I become more insane when I try to rationalize and justify his behavior, and again, that's what, if I can't make him be sane and make him do right things, then I try and make excuses for him, which is one more time adding lie upon lie upon lie to make it look okay to the outside world about what's going on. This is when I start lying about all the stuff that's going on in my life, because I can't let you see the truth of what's going on, and I don't know any other way to step away from, sanity than to live the lie. And that to me is the lie of the family disease of alcoholism, that you have to hide what's going on in your life, that you can't be who you are, that you can't, actually rationally look, and being rational. That's what sanity is all about. What's the truth? And I've heard that shared here earlier. It's all about the truth. The family disease of alcoholism wants you to live the lie, to pretend, the reasons, the excuses, the made up stories, when recovery and sanity is only based on the truth. And I liken, living in the family disease of alcoholism, it's like living in a room in a dark cave, and then you walk into the meetings, and what happens is, what do? They turn on the lights. And when you've been in a dark cave for a very, very long time, what's your first reaction to having the lights turned on? You cover your eyes. It's too painful to look at, but little bit by little bit by little bit, why do we keep coming back, and why do we keep coming back? Because I believe we know the truth when we hear it. I absolutely positively believe that. But how I was affected by the disease of alcoholism is, and my craziness comes from, I started to become a reactor. When you're not dealing with the rational, when you're not dealing with the truth, I just react to everybody. I don't respond. I don't respond appropriately. It's what's going on. I just have to react to, because that's how the family disease of alcoholism always is. It's always an emergency. It's always, we need an answer now. I'm in jail. You got to come get me right away. You got to give me some money, or these people are going to hurt me. It's just like bam, bam, bam. And so I become a reactor in life. And even into the program, it took me a long time to stop reacting to every situation hysterically. I remember we were camping. My husband was sober maybe three years at this point. We used to go camping all the time, and I enjoyed camping. We had a motorhome. We had a great time. We took our kids everywhere, and it's in sobriety. We went to meetings all over the country in that motorhome. We just had the best time. But there's things I love about camping, and there's things I don't love about camping. And I'm really not a dirt fan, and I'm not a bug fan, and I'm especially not a bug fan. And we were in this one particular part of Utah in the middle of summer, and it was like Bug City, USA. And by the end of the day, I was like shot full. I mean, I just couldn't take it anymore. And we were sitting by the campfire roasting marshmallows, and all of a sudden I felt something slither down my neck and then into my bra. And I started just right away, the reaction, the panic, screaming, yelling, it's in my bra, it's in my bra, it's some god awful thing, and my husband's digging through my bra, trying to get it out. And it turned out the back of my earring had come undone. And that's what was in my bra, and one more time, this is what we learn not to do here anymore. But it's hard not to learn to do that, not to go to that dark place. And that to me is every time I find myself going to that insanity place, and that's why I say, like, this last, 5 weeks has been really difficult for me, because my brain wants to take me to, we talk about what's our worst fear. Well, folks, my worst fear happened. And, but I'm here. And because I don't react anymore, I try and respond. I try and look at the actual situation and what's gone on in my life. My husband had cancer, and he fought the hard fight for a long time. And we knew what we were up against. And because we knew what we were up against, we were current when he took his last breath. I don't know how you can be grateful for anything more than that. Again, it's not reacting anymore to what my life is going to look like. It's what my life looks like now. And how my life looked like then, up until that day, was that how lucky was I to be married to this person who loved me so much. And those are the things, that's the reality of my life. The insanity wants me to think I was robbed. He died too young. We were looking forward to a lot of other things to happen, blah, 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 blah. And that will take you to the worst place that you can possibly go. But, and then this whole coming to believe thing, I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Probably back maybe maybe when I was a couple years in the program. It didn't come easy to me. It did not come easy to me at all. But it came to me not because of my own experiences, but because of yours. Because after coming to the program for a couple of years, I knew you were telling me the truth. Maybe I couldn't exactly put it into practice for my own way, but I came to believe that you believed. And believe you me, for somebody who doesn't believe at all, that's a huge monumental step. And because I believed that you believed, I was able to come to believe. And it took a while. There is absolutely no doubt about that. We talk about being well-intentioned. I love that Theresa talked about that, because that was always my deal. I'm always well-intentioned. I was well-intentioned when my husband was drinking. I was well-intentioned when I did all the things that I did to him, because it was all for his own good, all to teach him a lesson, all to let him, so that he could get well. And I'll say so he could get well. And even though I say I was well-intentioned, and I'll tell you that that was my intention wasn't so much that he could get well. It was so that he could get well, so I could be well. Because as much as we talk about in Al-Anon how we care about the alcoholic and we don't want them to die from the disease and blah, 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 blah. If you're truly honest, as I was taught to be here in the program, the thing is I don't want anything to happen to him, because if something happens to him, what's going to happen to me? And that's the bottom line about that. And, and the insanity part, I think about this one particular incident with my, Butch got really drunk one time, and he has these people as scum of the earth friends, I call them scum of the earth people. They were his friends and stuff. And they call me one day, and Butch is so drunk at their house that if I do not come and get him, the drug dealers that he's with are going to call the police. That's how whacked out my husband was. And, and I put on my cape and off, I go to get him, and I get him home, and we had a small child, and I went and took the child in the house first and put him in his crib. And I came down and got Butch, and Butch had fallen in the street and cut his head open, and, blood was kind of gushing out of it. And I'd like to tell you I was concerned about him. I was not, because it's just like, I can't let the neighbors see him. Again, this is the insanity. I'm not worried about my husband bleeding to death or anything else. I'm worried about if the neighbors will see him, how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism. And I couldn't pick him up because he's too dang heavy, so I remember grabbing him by the ankles and dragging him down the sidewalk, and a little trickle of blood falling behind like a little snail trail there. And then this guy's driving by, and here I am dragging a guy down by the heels who's bleeding, down the street. And this guy stops and says, "Are you having a problem?" Because that's what the normie people think. We're just having a little problem here. And I'm like, yes, my husband's fallen and he can't get up. So they help me get him up, and we get him upstairs, and I get him in bed. And now we're yelling and screaming at each other. And Mr. Good Samaritan no longer wants to participate. He's out the door. Butch is on the bed, big puddle of blood coming out, now on the bedspread. I want him to die. Again, the insanity of the disease, because that'll just solve all my problems. But I don't want him to die with my fingerprints all over it, so I get hysterical and I call 911, and they send hook and ladder, police, paramedics, everybody's at my house, and then I'm with the baby, and, they're cleaning up my husband, and I'm crying with, "Oh, my husband. And the police come in and they go, "Mrs. Gantner, your husband says he injured himself because you pushed him down a flight of stairs." Now, I know that didn't happen. And I'd like to tell you, but I'll tell you what happened to me at that moment. Again, reaction. I got red hot freaking mad. Me, the sober person. I got so angry. Just all I could see was red. Again, the reaction, no sanity, nothing here. I told those cops, no, I didn't push him down, but if you'll prop him up, I'll be happy to push him down in front of the police. And I have a small child. I'm insane at this moment, and they know it. They could take that kid away from me. But again, where do I go with it? And I think that I'm not affected. I think I'm crazy only because he was crazy first. Well, you can be crazy first, you can be crazy second, it doesn't matter. You can have 4 crazies and you're all crazy. You're just all freaking absolutely insane crazy. But of course I don't see that when it's going on. Why? Because I'm justified. And I always say that justifiable anger is just as deadly to the Al-Anon, I think, is the first drink is to the alcoholic, because I will run with that. And that's what keeps me crazy and keeps me insane and keeps me from the sunlight of the spirit. But again, coming to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity was just that. When I'm sitting in those first Al-Anon meetings, again, I don't know any of this. I don't believe any of this, but I'll tell you what happened at those first Al-Anon meetings. I knew the truth when I heard it. That's the only explanation I have for why I kept coming back. And when you've been crazy for a long time, boy, just looking at a little bit of sanity, I mean, oh my gosh, it's like driving a junker and then they stick you in a, Mercedes or something. Just for that hour and a half, I got to ride around in a Mercedes with you guys and then go back to my junker again. But that's what's, and again, this is about coming to believe. It's not about hurry up, do this all, it's just about coming to believe that a power greater than yourself can make your life just be a little bit better. And that's what got to happen to me. And then, going on to step 3, made a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as we understood him. This was a step I wasn't going to do. Okay. I want you guys to know that. I saw the stuff when I got there, and again, I always like, why do we do the steps? You can BS your way through this. They'll never know if you did it or you didn't do it. How the heck are they really going to know if you're into it or you're not into it? And I love that there's a line in our Al-Anon literature that talks about working the steps. And it says and all it says is, that working the steps is about obedience to the unenforceable. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that because that's really what gets to happen here. Because again, one more time, my own example isn't going to be good enough. My husband's example of sobriety wasn't good enough. He'd lost all credibility with me. I was always just whatever. But watching the people in the meetings I went to, going to open meetings of alcoholics and watching the alcoholics, that's where it became credible for me. Why would you lie to me? Why would you tell me these things if they weren't true? That's where I learned where the alcoholic wasn't drinking at me. I trusted you guys because I had no reason for you to lie to us about any of this. And really, I wondered why you didn't lie. Your stories are pretty freaking crazy. And, and I mean, you show a whole, that had to be the truth. So I got to learn that. That's how I got to learn that. And, but, for me, it was just a really, really difficult step. And basically it was difficult for me because I didn't grow up with any kind of a God. We weren't baptized. My dad was the alcoholic. He was a very angry, very violent alcoholic. He was the higher power since the day I was born. I've never known any other. What I got to learn about the person with the power is the one that hits you, the one that can yell at you, the one who has the loudest voice, the one that can, wreak out the most damage. That's the higher power person that I grew up with. We never went to church, never knew anything about God. My dad would always talk about he was the spawn of the devil and me and my sisters were the spawnettes and he was going to hell and he was taking us with him. These are our bedtime stories from my dad. This is my understanding, of God. There just wasn't, it just did not exist for me. And so I remember being in that first year going to those meetings and this one guy had a meeting at his house, a 12-step meeting. It was just about the 12 steps. We did the 12 steps every week. It was, step 1, step 2, step 3, rotation all the way through. And we never varied from it. It's what it was. And the other thing at this Al-Anon 12-step meeting was if you didn't work the step, you couldn't share on it, because they don't want to hear from people who don't know what the heck they're talking about. And so if you didn't work that step, you couldn't share about it. So I don't know how many times we went around to step 3 that first year and I never shared. And, Jean, who was not my sponsor, but, felt the need to talk to me about this, questioned me one time after the meeting why I wasn't sharing on step 3. And I said, because I haven't done step 3, and now I'm 6, 7, 8 months into the program and he's getting a little bit concerned about this, and so the following week, and I think we were probably on step 7 or 8, but he decided he's leading the meeting. He talked to the leader, asked if he could lead. They said, sure, you can lead. And he said, we're going to go back to step 3 because Larcine is here and she is having a hard time finding a higher power. And so I want every single person in this room to share tonight how they work step 3 and how they got a higher power in their life. And I was like, great, wonderful, and everybody shared that. And then after the meeting, and again, I passed because I hadn't done it yet. And then after the meeting was over and we say the Lord's Prayer and we're all done, Gene comes up to me and he goes, well, Larcine, did that help you? Are you going to be able to share on step 3 the next time? And I said, Gene, I really, really appreciate everybody trying to help me with this, but I'm sorry, this is not going to happen for me. I don't believe in God. I don't think I'm ever going to believe in God, but thanks anyway. Thanks for the effort. And, and again, in all my excuses, that self-justification, that all of that crap, all of that anger, all of that blah coming out. And what Gene said to me is, Larcine, why God gave you ears. And again, he kind of said it kind of, in his little sarcastic Gene way. And I just said, yes, so I know, so I can hear what you guys are trying to tell me. And I said it just as snottily as I could. And he turned to me and he goes, in most people's cases, Larcine, that's true. But in your case, God gave you ears so you'd have something to hold on to while you pull your head out of your ass. And I am here to tell you that may not be the nicest thing, and I don't know if that even fly today, but I'm telling you 40, whatever, it's 2 years ago, I couldn't have heard anything better. I couldn't have heard anything better, because what I got to learn about that step is there is a big, big difference between can't and won't. And so I remember going home that night, going in my backyard, and just in the backyard, it was after the meeting. And I just looked up at this guy and I just said, hi, God, it's Larcine Gantner, gave him my address because he doesn't know me. He don't know where I live. And I said, I just was at a meeting and Crazy Gene says, that if I don't find you, that if I don't try and find you, I'm never going to get better. And though I was very defiant all the time and came across as some big badass, who's never going to do this stuff, I wanted what you had. Why do I keep coming? You can mess up yourself in your head all the time about all the reasons, but there's a reason you keep coming, so why do I keep coming? Because I wanted what you had. And I knew Crazy Gene was a smart guy and I knew he wouldn't steer me wrong. And when he told me I couldn't get it unless I got a higher power, I knew that it was true. So I asked God that night to please just help me find him, and again, and it's not like there was a burning bush or any of that other kind of stuff happened. But that's where the willingness is so important in this program. I know we have a line in our ODAP book that says, short arms need man to reach to heaven. So anxious is heaven to reach to man. You just got to try just a little bit, and that's just kind of where it ended up starting for me, and I still had a lot of doubts about a higher power. It's like, things would happen all the time and I could never understand. I'd make progress, with this higher power in my life, and having this belief. And it's easy to do when things are going okie dokie, but when things get rough, the road gets a little harder, things don't work out the way you want to. You hear stuff in the program like, God's punishing, you don't hear God's punishing you, but God never gives you more than you can handle, which I think is a load of crap. What I've come to learn here is I think that, there's nothing that happens to you that God won't help you handle, but there's plenty of stuff that's happened. I've seen people go through some really insane, rough things. And with the help of their higher power, they were able to make that journey, and they didn't necessarily make it with a load of grace. I'm not saying I'm getting through my thing here with a load of grace, but I'm doing the best that I can because I know God is there and I know God is going to help me get through it. I used to say to my sponsor, Carol, all the time, why the heck do we pray for people? Somebody's got cancer, somebody's, having this going on, somebody's out there drinking, and then they die from drinking, or they die from their cancer, or they die from whatever illness it is that they have, or somebody gets killed in a tragic automobile accident. I said to Carol, why do we pray for them when they die anyway? It's a bunch of BS, what's that all about? And I'll never forget what Carol said to me, because she said, Larcine, because again, one more time, you're making this little teeny weeny God that you think does things and punishes people and is responsible for all these outcomes. He is not. He says, God doesn't take people. God simply receives them when they get there, and then that's always been a real comfort to me, because it's not a test. It's not about, God's got a plan and you're going to live this long and you're going to live this long, or my other thing, I'm going to Al-Anon a long, long time. And I have a son that ends up drinking and doing a lot of drugs and causing a lot of problems. And I'm very fearful for this kid. And I start getting pissed at meetings, because I go to meetings. I've been going to meetings. I sponsor people. I'm of service, and then Jane Smith next to me, she doesn't do crapola and her son gets sober immediately. What the frick is that about? And again, one more time, my illusion, that if you work hard enough, that it's somehow going to protect all these other people around you. And one more time, I'm making my higher power really small because I'm wanting him to fix people and I want him to do my bidding, when in reality, what all I need is my higher power to help me get through whatever it is that I need to go through. What my higher power wants me to know, it's not my job to change people, nor is it his. It's my, I change when I'm willing to have God change me. I'm willing when I surrender. I'm willing when I'm saying, God, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. You have to help me. And that's how it ended up happening for my son. He didn't get sober right away. He was 36 years old when he finally got sober. And he didn't get sober because his mom was working a great Al-Anon program and his dad was working a great AA program. He got sober when he was willing to accept God's grace. And I believe God's grace is available to every person who walks the face of this planet. It's just whether or not, you're willing to ask for that grace. You have to be the one that wants the grace. It's available if you're just willing. But I can't will it for someone else. I can only will it for me. And when I'm working really hard on wanting God's grace for you, guess who's not getting any grace? Guess who's not getting any grace? And then I wonder why my life one more time becomes unmanageable. And one more time, I don't feel connected to my higher power and what's all going on there. I was, they gave my husband 6 months. He didn't even go 6 weeks. But I remember I was frantically because I was kind of losing. Thank you. I was kind of losing my mind again. And so I ferociously reading a bunch of stuff. And I've read about every piece of AA and Al-Anon literature probably 15 times by now. So, and again, one more time, desperate for more. So I was reading some other outside spiritual books and just looking and just trying to reconnect. I was having such a hard time. And I ran across this one book and I was just thumbing through it when I was in the hospital with him. And there was a line in this book and it says, do you know what the difference is between you and God? And that got my curiosity because I've always wondered, what is the difference between me and God? And the line simply says is God never thinks he's you. And and one more time, I'm trying to force God's will, trying to say, plead with God, pardon with God, whatever, when in reality, what I have to do is I just have to turn my will and my life over to him, and when I do, things are going to work out. There's a John Lennon quote that I just love that's been taking me from day to day. It says, in the end, everything's going to be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end, and I know it's not the end, Butch and I were married for 49 years. And I always told him I would love him forever. And I know he said he would love me forever. And forever's forever. It's not going away. And there's a little line in the, we have an Al-Anon book. It's called God as I Understood or something like that. It's just this little blue book. And there's a line in there and it says, I'm developing an understanding of God I don't fully understand. And for that, I am truly grateful. I'm going to stop here because I'm just becoming a bubbling idiot and I don't want to end that way. And I don't want to end on a sad note. I want you to know I'm walking through this one day at a time. I feel my husband's presence and I feel his love, and I certainly feel yours.